a defendant had filed a motion to like not have to go to the jury view. And then the jury and the defense lawyer and the judge and the prosecutor show up at the jury view, and the defendant's like theory is like, it was a gun case. And he's like, I didn't know the gun was there. It wasn't my gun. It was my girlfriend's gun, or it was in her bag. And it was at this like store he was setting up like to open, like he's putting out inventory or something like that. So he's not supposed to be at the jury view, but then the jury goes with the judge and the prosecutor and defense lawyer, and the defendant is there setting up like he normally would be the day he was charged with the crime,
right?
But, like make it look like it's the exact same scenario that they're walking in on, like he had no idea.
ICG Legal.
There was a case that was tried like, I don't know, last week or 2 weeks ago. And often defense lawyers, or sometimes the prosecutor will like ask for a jury view, and then the jury would get into a van and go to the scene of a crime and then look around. And like they don't talk to anybody. They just like look around, see what's going on, and then they leave. So a defendant had filed a motion to like not have to go to the jury view. And then the jury and the defense lawyer and the judge and the prosecutor show up at the jury view, and the defendant's like theory is like, it was a gun case. And he's like, I didn't know the gun was there. It wasn't my gun. It was my girlfriend's gun, or it was in her bag. And it was at this like store he was setting up like to open, like he's putting out inventory or something like that. So he's not supposed to be at the jury view, but then the jury goes with the judge and the prosecutor and defense lawyer, and the defendant is there setting up like he normally would be the day he was charged with the crime,
right?
But, like make it look like it's the exact same scenario that they're walking in on, like he had no idea. So then the prosecutor had a fit about it and moved for a mistrial, but the lawyer just agreed that the case should be mistried.
So it was mistried.
Yes.
The judge agreed as well. That is interesting. Jury views are interesting. Certain judges really aren't in favor of jury views. And other ones, I feel like if you file a motion for a jury view, it's never really a problem. I would say a vast majority of the higher felonies that I've tried, there was always a jury view, which are interesting. I think for lawyers, they're not as exciting, but I think for someone who is going to sit on the jury, they can get a lot out of it. I don't know. The only time I've ever really wanted a jury view was in an aggravated murder case that happened in a house. I wanted the jury to see the layout of the house and windows around the house. And it was interesting because it was a couple years prior to when it had occurred. And there was a new tenant in the house that lived there. So obviously the crime scene was 2 years old. Things had since been changed, but the actual layout. But I think there's benefits for jury views under those circumstances. I feel like a lot of times the prosecution may want to bring a jury to a jury view to see where shots would have been fired from, just the layout of the area around, if they have a theory as to where a getaway car was, but they are interesting. But that's a really interesting story as well. And as you said, the state of Ohio and the defense agreed that it should be a mistrial.
Yeah, I mean, if he's going to just show up there and be like, hey, look, I'm setting stuff up just like I was the other time, I guess the jury's influenced by that.
Yeah.
Improperly. Especially since I'm sure the guy wasn't planning to testify, but who knows?
Yeah, right. And then there was just which I think there was just an acquittal not too long ago in the Mahoning County Court of Common Pleas.
Wasn't that a rape case?
That was a rape case. Acquittals occur, and they occur, I suppose, a fair amount, but they're rare. Well,
we have more acquittals in Mahoning County than probably the 3 surrounding counties combined.
Yeah. There's a lot of good lawyers in Mahoning County. There's a lot of good lawyers in Trumbull County as well, but we're exposed more to the Mahoning County lawyers. But there's some really good criminal defense lawyers that practice here with a lot of years under their belt and a lot of experience. So it's kind of fun to go in and watch their trials. You learn a lot. I feel like, every lawyer has their own style and has to develop their own style, but it's as younger lawyers, it's nice to be able to pick from guys like Tom Zena, Jerry Ingram, Sam Amendolara, Lou DeFabio, and John Uhas, and Lynn Morrow. Those are just people that are trying cases around here. It's interesting to see different styles.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know why specifically there's so many Mahoning County acquittals. I would venture to say it can't be just the result of overly better lawyering. I think Mahoning County juries are slightly different than juries in Columbiana and Trumbull County.
Yeah, I would agree.
I mean, I think they're a little more critical, even of the state, whereas I don't know that that's as true in Trumbull and Columbiana. But, I mean, I agree. There's great lawyering here, and we've got good examples to kind of look after.
Sure.
As it relates to what we decide to do with cases. But
there was also a rare plaintiff's verdict not too long ago as well.
In Mahoning County?
Yeah.
On a med mal?
On a medical malpractice case, which I don't want to talk about any of the names involved with that. But I thought one thing that was interesting in that case was, and I don't know this for sure, but I heard that Lee Steinberg came in and testified.
Oh, as a plaintiff's damages expert.
Yes. It revolved around a football injury or an injury to a football player.
Right.
And it
testifies to value? Or?
Yeah, his value as to money he lost in a potential NFL career, whether it would be draft status or undrafted. I'm not certain exactly what he testified to, but I did hear that occurred, and that's pretty awesome. I mean, Lee Steinberg was a super agent back in the day, when in the 80s and 90s, I believe, when the 49ers and the Cowboys were competing for Super Bowls, what seemed to be like every other year. Steinberg had almost a majority of the starters in both locker rooms. He had all the big quarterbacks back in the day.
So the Niners and the Cowboys.
Yeah.
So both
I mean, that's the era that I remember, and those are the stories I've heard, but it's really, Lee Steinberg's a pretty neat story. And they say that the movie Jerry Maguire was made after Lee Steinberg. So the fact that he was in the Mahoning County Court of Common Pleas for a trial is pretty awesome. Again, I didn't see him. I wish I would have known. I would have went and watched.
Yeah, I mean, I remember there being some talk of there being that case, but there's no one's ever really publicizing when there's civil cases.
No, for sure.
Unless like we run into a magistrate and they're like, "Oh, did you see that case is on?"
Yeah, that's true. It does not get publicized.
More there's a murder that there's a WKBN article about every detail of the trial now.
Right, exactly.
Props to Joe Gorman.
Yes.
His excellent reporting on WKBN.
For sure.
On the beat every day.
Yeah. So then what else? We've got how old is the Youngstown Municipal Court building now, the new building that the court is in?
When did they do it?
After COVID, right?
Yeah, I think it was like right as COVID started, maybe. But I don't know.
That's a beautiful courthouse.
Yeah, it is really nice.
Judge DeSalvo and Judge Baldwin sit on the bench there. So the municipal courts, or that municipal court specifically, will handle all of the misdemeanor cases, small claims. So they've got two judges and a magistrate Brundage,
right,
who is a former prosecutor.
Yes, both her and Judge Baldwin.
Yeah, they were Mahoning County prosecutors, right?
Yes. Yeah, I had many cases with them. I mean, not as much Judge Baldwin, more so Megan. In fact, I remember Megan and I getting into a heated plea discussion because I filed what she thought was a frivolous motion to suppress, which it probably was. But I'm like, you wouldn't be nice to me until I filed this motion.
Was that in juvenile court or when she was a common pleas?
That was a common pleas. So I don't know if it was Durkin. I think it was Judge Durkin.
Probably, because that's where I remember her last. And I don't know that she really left that courtroom until she went to the juvenile court.
Yeah, I don't think she did either. But that was that period like right after Evans moved or Evans retired. So he had just got to that court, I think.
I love Megan. When I was an intern for Judge Durkin over the summer in law school, Megan was the prosecutor in that court. And I think maybe Nick Bravetta was as well. He was actually fairly new in the Mahoning County prosecutor's office. And Megan was just awesome. Like, she was cool. She was so nice, and I didn't know anything about anything. And I got to go in and watch her and Judge Durkin and all the defense lawyers. So
yeah, I did the same thing with Judge Evans just probably, 3 years before that. But there wasn't as much. I pretty much just kind of bummed around with the magistrate and Mary.
yeah.
Who is our courthouse mother, as we call her, Mary Ruscher, who works for the prosecutor's office now. But she, there wasn't a ton, for whatever reason, there wasn't that many trials. I remember watching a trial with Ross Smith. It was like a burglary or a robbery or something, but I don't even think it was in our court. And then otherwise, I just kind of like looked at summary judgment motions and stuff.
Yeah. I think, and it was not in Judge Durkin's court. I want to say it was in Judge Lou Diapolito's court. But I want to say I saw a medical malpractice get tried, and Norm Moses was the plaintiff's lawyer. And it was a plaintiff's verdict. But I don't remember if that was when I was doing the internship or just the time I was down there watching trials. But
you remember who was defending the case?
I don't remember. But I do know it was in Judge Lou Diapolito's court. I do know that. I just don't remember who the defense lawyers were. And I obviously know Norm was the plaintiff's lawyer.
I remember I watched Greg Rossi try a contested liability accident case in front of Lou, and he was awesome. I mean, he was really personable to the jury. They really liked him. They had a good experience. Of course, he won the trial, which was nice. And he was like super nice to us and like in front of the client afterwards. Like, you guys did a great job. And it was awesome.
Yeah. You had an acquittal with Jimmy the Gent.
Yeah, I could talk about this case because I know the client would be fine to talk about it. So the client is alleged to have taken a car from his baby mama, and baby mama and her and him get into a fight. So she comes to him. He gets in the car. Her story is that like they do like a Chinese fire drill at some intersection where he gets out of the car, she gets out of the car, and he starts driving. And then she's like, she says it happens in some place, it was like Glenwood and Mahoning Avenue that she says this happens. And then they drive around the city, and they end up on the Woodland like exit for that expressway. I don't even know what interstate that is. Do you know?
Huh.
It's like, I don't know, 680 or maybe I think it's just a little freeway there. So they're going around that bend too fast and the car flips over. So she says that he's driving and he's trying to kill them both. And he says, I didn't even drive the car. I was always in the passenger seat, and she was screaming at me because I was sleeping with another woman. And the car flipped over. And we're like, okay, well, I guess we'll have a trial. But it was like, we didn't realize until we got into the courtroom that EMS had basically said they found the alleged victim like hanging out of the driver's side of the car. Like, so I got up and they have that, the state has that ELO thing.
Yes.
So I'm like, can I use your thing? And they're like, yeah. So I put up a picture and it's like the side of the car, the driver's side of the car. And I'm like, so like, can you describe for me where she's at? And he's like, the witness is like, okay, yeah, he's like, she's just kind of laying here right outside of the driver's door with her feet under the car. I'm like, so she's just like laying right there, perpendicular to the driver's door. Yeah, okay. I don't have any more questions. He sat down. Like, I think she might have been driving the car.
Jury agreed.
Yes. And the prosecutor, Mary Beth DeGravia, who's now a prosecutor in Portage County, she looked across counsel table before the trial started and looked at me and said, your ego is going to be ridiculous after this case. They knew they were losing the case before they even started. Like, why didn't you just give us a misdemeanor? Because the guy was on paper to the feds. If he got convicted, he was done.
Yeah, right.
He's doing 30 if he gets convicted.
Sure. That's a big deal. Oh, yeah.
But we had a good time. Jimmy's set to retire,
Yeah, I know. And I should clarify something. When I named certain lawyers prior to this, it's not, and I mean this.
It's not an exhaustive list.
It's not. I mean, Jimmy Gentile's another one who has a great body of work. There's a lot. There really is. There's so many great lawyers, which we are fortunate as young lawyers in this community to get to see practice. They were great examples. So I do believe that our area has a very strong legal presence with very good lawyers.
Yeah, especially in that realm, the criminal defense or the trial realm. I agree. I mean, we'd go to those bar events and people talk about how, Youngstown's different and they'd put us up against other jurisdictions. And I tend to agree with that. I mean, it's tough to say you're going to find a better, especially a criminal defense bar. Mm-hmm. I mean, those guys were killing it for a long time.
Yeah, for sure.
And across, they were trying cases in other places and being
right. This is
successful.
A lot of success. Yeah, for sure. So what else? We've got in the general division of the common pleas bench, 5 judges.
Right.
So we've got Judge Kirschbaum, Judge Durkin, Judge Dapolito, which is Judge Lou's son, Anthony, Judge D'Onofrio, and Judge Sweeney. And then domestic relations judge is Judge Smith. Our probate judge is Judge Rusu. Right? Am I missing anybody?
That's the whole common pleas bench.
Yeah. All good judges, all good people as well.
Yes. And that's another thing that's cool about our community is that you get a lot of relationships that allow you to get comfortable in places. I mean,
sure.
It's different to definitely walk into Mahoning County than if I'm walking into Cuyahoga. That's no doubt.
Yeah, no, that is for sure. One in particular who could be a stickler, and he's a tough judge, tough judge, is Judge Kirschbaum. I always laugh because he procedurally, you better be up to snuff when you go in front of the judge.
Yeah, I mean, there's no human being on the face of this planet that probably instills the amount of respect that Judge Kirschbaum does, and I would think that the years on the grind in the court-appointed system, not really trying cases, I won't say that, but dealing cases, resolving cases, working files with the judge, I would say I'm better because of those situations.
Oh yeah, I agree. He's a tough judge, but he commands a certain amount of respect for the court, and he'll always tell you this is a formal proceeding. So he does make you a better lawyer. He's a tough judge, but again, I think in different ways they all do. There's certain judges that let you try your case a little more than another judge might, which I can appreciate, especially when we're defending a case.
Right. Hands off is kind of nice at some point.
Yeah, right. I think it's a little easier to try a case when you're a little bit more hands off. But again, you've got to adapt. It's like I'll always say it's like sports. If you go and you're playing on turf or you're playing on grass or you're playing on this hardwood floor rather than this type of surface, you got to change how you play or what you do. And it's the same thing in the courtrooms. It's like maybe in this court in Mahoning County you can do something, but you can't do that in Cuyahoga or Summit or even in Trumbull.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing that you got to consider in those scenarios is like, how's it going to be perceived? You know what I mean? Like, even if you do it and it's not going to be, the judge may not say like, counsel, like you really need to not do that. But how is it going to work? I mean, I guess like I tried a suppression in Marietta once and like I'm up like, being animated, pulling a Tony Moranto, kind of dancing around and the prosecutor hasn't moved from their chair. But it didn't matter.
Right.
The judge did what she wanted to do.
Sure.
She threw me a bone on the HGN, which is like a horizontal gaze nystagmus and OVIs. If we had Mr. Ingram here, he could talk about HGN for hours.
Yeah, he loves that.
But I don't, at the end of the day, I don't think it was effective me standing up and doing the walk and turn in the courtroom.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's different strokes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is really true. So I just read an article actually, and I haven't followed the case really at all, but it seems like it's in the penalty phase of the trial for the Parkland shooter in Florida.
Did you talk to Ryan about this today?
I did not. I didn't. I just read this article and
So I heard this. Brian told me the story.
Yeah.
And he said that, they're in the penalty phase. So if you have a death penalty case, you try, did they commit the crime?
right.
And then you try, should they get the death penalty? And I guess this defense witness list and their presentation to the prosecutors was, we're going to put on 20 witnesses in mitigation. So they get up and they go on the record, and the judge says, defense, please call your first witness. And they say, we rest.
Yeah. And the judge came unglued.
Yeah, right.
Said like
it's unprofessional.
most unprofessional thing she's ever witnessed, which was really wild because she went on a tirade after that about how this defense lawyer had been what seemed to be habitually late, disrespectful to the court, all these things, and she just thought it was a dirty trick because
they got to prep it all.
Exactly.
Right.
And the prosecution gets an opportunity to put on rebuttal witnesses.
Right.
But I don't know this again for sure, but I thought it was like on their witness list, there was like 40 witnesses.
Oh, 40.
Now I don't know if they called any of them. Maybe there were 40, they called 20 and then rested.
I don't think they called anybody.
So they just
as far as I know. I mean, this is coming from
right.
Brian.
No, right.
But
that's an interesting case too. Yeah.
Yeah.
That would be a horribly tough case to try as a defense lawyer.
I mean, we've never tried deaf penalty cases.
No.
I don't, I read a book by a lawyer named David Dow, and he started the Texas Innocence Project. And the book was kind of like a story of like his life and some of the like 3 or 4 cases he had worked on. And he basically was an appellate lawyer, but some of these cases are like, this guy's not fit for trial, or they shouldn't be killing him.
Right.
One was that kind of scenario where
sure.
Mentally he wasn't probably there enough to be killed. One was maybe he didn't do it. I mean, then you kill him anyway, kind of thing.
Right.
And then the third one was also screwed up. And I'm like, I think I don't have a problem with the death penalty to the extent that I think it's wrong to do, an eye for an eye.
Yeah.
But the fact that you could ever get it wrong means you probably shouldn't do it.
Yeah, it is scary. I mean, that is a very controversial subject, the death penalty. I mean, because there's even prosecutors who aren't opposed to the death penalty, but understand the cost of the death penalty.
Yeah.
And think that it's more worthwhile for the state of Ohio just to incarcerate somebody for life rather than go through that whole process because you spend so much money.
Yeah, I mean,
the state spends so much money.
That's the other part of it. It's like, why? What's the point?
Right.
I mean, especially if they're gonna spend 20 years in prison before you get through all the habeas.
I mean, this may not be a popular opinion, but if that's me, I'd rather just die than live in prison for the rest of my life.
Well, I mean, listen,
just me.
I don't disagree with you.
But it's an interesting subject because it really is. If you talk to judges, defense lawyers, prosecutors, even lawyers who don't practice in this realm, everybody has an opinion on the death penalty. And I think some people have an opinion, and I don't think they really understand really what the death penalty entails, how much is behind it.
Yeah, and that litigation is just so crazy.
Yeah.
And that's part of the problem is they don't really understand what it takes to get that done.
Don't quote me, but I think you have to be a lawyer 5 years to try a death case. If it's not 5, it's 3. But I tried to get on with attorney Tom Zena, who's one of my all-time favorite lawyers and one of the best lawyers I've ever watched in trial. He's amazing. And I didn't have the years to do it, but I went to the death penalty seminar in Columbus. Sure. And it was interesting. I mean, it's obviously a pro-defense seminar, also a riot.
Yeah,
I mean,
I've heard stories.
Oh, we had a blast.
Death penalty seminar.
Me and Eddie
shout out to Attorney Hartwig.
And me and Eddie Hartwig stayed together, and we just had a great time.
Yeah,
that is a fun.
I've always wanted to go down.
Yeah, it really is.
I love Columbus.
Columbus is. Well, we both went to Ohio State.
Right.
But yeah, that was me and Eddie had a blast. Jimmy was down there. Jimmy the Gent,
of course.
Attorney Yarwood, another fantastic lawyer. All kinds of guys down there. So
There's a Youngstown contingency that definitely frequents the death penalty seminar.
Yes.
Which is a weird thing to, party with for if you're a lawyer, but I'm not judging. I would be the same way.
Yeah, no, I mean,
but yeah, I mean, the seminar is always an interesting time. There's always some stories generated from that.
yeah. The cocktail hour after the first or second day, I don't remember which day, is also amazing.
Yeah.
It's really fun.
Yarwood always talks about that, that's the pinnacle.
Yes.
The pinnacle of being a lawyer is death penalty work.
So David Beatrice says the same thing.
Yeah.
It's interesting. He says, like, till you go through that and what it does to your mind and body and the amount of time that you spend
Right.
and how worn out you get. He's like, that's that. He said that, I don't know that he called it the pinnacle, but in a roundabout way, he said it's the pinnacle.
Right.
And again, another really tremendous lawyer who's had a lot of success.
Sure.
Is Attorney Beatrice. So yeah, they're fun times, good stories, and you learn a lot, make memories. I mean, I feel like one of the nice things about our profession is the camaraderie.
Yes. And community wise too. I mean, that's something that's different from Youngstown to everywhere else, I think.
Yeah, no, I agree. There's a lot of pressure behind being a lawyer. I feel like if you're a lawyer who takes your job serious and your obligations very serious, but it is a very rewarding job as well, and it's a lot of fun.
Right. No, I totally agree with that. I think if you look at it from the perspective of what the heck else would I do with my life, I couldn't think of anything. But
yeah, I'm with you. I don't know that I want to do anything different.
I don't know. It's interesting to think about whether or not we end up trying death penalty cases. I mean, I don't.
When was the last death penalty case?
There hasn't been a death penalty indictment in Mahoney County for a while.
I know.
That I'm aware of.
Right. Well, no. The little boy out of Struthers. That's a horrible
Rowan.
case. Yeah.
Yeah, that is screwed up.
It's a sad case. I think Attorney Lynn Morrow's on that. I think Attorney Uhas.
That happened, 4 years ago?
Yeah.
At least.
Yeah. It's in front of Judge Diapolito, Anthony.
Okay.
That would be really tough.
Yeah.
That would be a really tough case to try on both ends, really. I mean,
and this is, part of what we do is evaluate these scenarios. And it's not that I have all the sympathy in the world for this kid.
Sure.
But maybe from penalty phase, it's not that bad.
Maybe not.
I mean, you certainly, he doesn't go in there attempting to kill this kid.
No, I don't think so. But I don't know the facts of that case. You know what I mean? That's one.
I don't either.
I
know there's a lot going on.
Right. That case seems like it has a lot of moving parts because initially they indicted one person and subsequently I think one or two other people have since been indicted in that case. But that would be a tough pill to swallow. Interestingly enough, though, back to death penalty cases, from a defense perspective, there's things that need to be done, as in the seminar, how many years you practice, what you're qualified to try. From a prosecution standpoint,
nothing.
They can just walk in and try that case.
Right.
Right? So, I mean...
It doesn't happen often that's how it goes.
No, it does not at all. But I'm saying it is interesting.
Yes. Well, I mean, I guess that makes some sense. Like, from my perspective as a defense lawyer, I know not that I'm necessarily a defense lawyer as much as I used to be, but I would say that it makes more sense that it's that way than the other way.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
I mean, you need
you guys dying.
The experience
sure
and the education certainly needs to be on the part of the defense. I agree totally. And I mean, prosecutors who try death penalty cases are
lawyers.
seasoned prosecutors and very good lawyers.
Right.
But
shout out to Michael Yakovone.
Yeah, Michael's a great lawyer. Yeah. Yak's a great lawyer. He's a hard charger.
Yes. He's an aggressive dude for sure.
Mike's a hard charger.
But I got to try a case with Michael and Jen Paris and me and Jerry, our partner Jerry Ingram, and Tom Zena and Nick Cerny. So it was a good group of lawyers.
Yeah, all good lawyers.
Yeah. So it was interesting in front of Judge Diapolito. So we didn't do well, but it was a difficult case. I would say that I agree with Frank. I mean, You look at Zena, you look at Ingram, you look at Amanda Laura. The old guard of defense lawyers in this town is crazy good.
Yeah, very talented.
Right.
Very talented. Jerry, who's our partner here, Sam, since you mentioned him, Sam and Mendelara, those guys also really get into a fair amount of federal work, which is it's just different.
Right.
I don't know. I feel like trial lawyers try cases, and if you know how to try a case, you know how to try a case. But I do think you need to have a good understanding of the federal system to practice in that area. I've had the opportunity, fortunately, to have a few of those cases, and it's different. It's way different than the state.
Right.
And it's been nice being in this office in our firm now. The sentencing guidelines and in the federal system are convoluted and really difficult to understand.
Yeah, Jerry's got a good grasp.
And Jerry's a master with it. I mean, he really is. That has been an education in and of itself.
Sure.
Like I'm over here, like I got paper out writing stuff down, like this many numbers.
He does it in his head.
Right, and Jerry can like look at it. He knows what page to go to. He's looking. He's like, all right, this is what you got to look at.
Right.
So he's a great sounding board from that perspective. But it's funny because you talk to some of the old guard in this town, and they talk about back in the day trying federal cases.
Yeah.
And it was like state cases. They would say, it was everybody practiced in federal court then, and that I believe has changed. I guess just from what I've heard. I don't know. I don't know it any other way.
Well, I mean, you get, the traditional, what we lawyers say is the feds aren't going to indict a dog.
No.
I mean, they have all the resources.
They got you in a Folgers can and it's sealed.
And they hand pick it. So
Yep.
they're not, they'll let the state try the bad cases.
Yeah, no.
And I don't, not that I blame them. I mean, that's what they should do. Because if I'm them, that's how I'd act.
Yeah.
Just like on Billions, you pick the right one.
Yeah, it's the truth.
So, I mean, I don't know. I've not gotten into that realm a lot. I don't know that I'm opposed to it, but it's not been where I've gone so far. But yeah, it's interesting to think about, that somebody's fate being a math equation more so than evaluating whether you're going to beat up a prosecutor.
Yeah. No, for sure. The federal system is it's a little different. A lot of great judges up there too as well. But they're intimidating.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, the federal system garnishes respect quickly.
Yes.
When you take your shoes off, you walk in the door, you're not
you're going
around.
through the metal detector and your belt. It's like the airport.
Yeah.
With TSA. What I mean? Like, they don't care if you're a lawyer. They don't care who you are. No. It's just...
And in this town, we benefit from the fact that everybody knows who we are.
Right.
So
yeah, we've got relationships.
We walk in the door and they go, go ahead.
Just go ahead.
Just like the guys with badges, shout out again to Michael Yakovone and those prosecutors. They just walk right in. So, a lot of times defense lawyers in these little courts, they're like, go ahead, counselor, good to see you. But if you walk into federal court, they don't care if you're Ken Cochran.
No, doesn't matter.
So you're in trouble.
Yeah. No, it doesn't matter. That's very true. It's different. Very, very, it's intensified, I don't care if it's a little mini pre-trial or a status conference.
Sure. Detention. You're like, oh boy.
You better be ready to go.
Right. You want to know the file. You want to know the law.
That's definitely an area of law that you don't want to venture into unless you either have somebody who has experience in it or you're comfortable. You've got some experience in it where you know how to navigate the system.
Sure.
Very rewarding, but also very intimidating.
Yes. I mean, I don't know. There are certain cases that they, lose or are resulting in hung verdicts.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I guess it kind of depends on the scenarios.
Yeah, you've got to have the right facts.
And I mean, I would venture to say that those are scenarios that they're overstretching.
Yeah, I agree. And I feel like it doesn't happen nearly as often now as it probably did back in the day.
Yeah.
Because you hear about a lot of acquittals in federal court, like back in the 90s, 80s, and that was probably when the resources were different, when how they did things were different.
Right.
it doesn't seem to happen as often now. It happens, but it just
Right.
doesn't seem to be as often as it used to.
Yeah, I mean, it's more cases where there's a gray area with respect to some factual issue that,
Sure.
it's tough to prove that specific element or
Sure.
whatever it is.
Yeah. Which is maybe another interesting topic that we could touch upon is like the mafia days, even here in Youngstown, and besides Youngstown, New York and Chicago and everywhere else, until the federal government established RICO.
Right.
And what Rico did to organized crime
Right.
is interesting. But
Well, and you get the state level.
Yeah.
The years of Marty Desmond, he had more RICO indictments.
Marty loved Rico.
Yeah.
He brought a lot of them. He knew it well.
Right.
He knew how to prosecute those cases, but you're right. I haven't thought about that. I don't know that I've seen a RICO indictment since Marty.
I would say that they're not indicting as many F1 RICOs as they once did.
Yeah, you're right. That was interesting though. Sometimes they would bring the AG's office in on those. Remember the drug cases?
Yeah.
You'd have
They have a
RICO
new
case.
one apparently.
A new AG?
Well, no, when that new indictment that came down from the feds, they had that. It was the same kind of tap. So they have a new one right now.
Oh, okay,
'Cause
yeah.
I was talking to Michael, and he said that Michael Yakovone, and he said that they just did one. Maz did one. Steve Mazchek, the drug task force prosecutor, just indicted, I don't know, 20 defendants. I have no idea how many with criminal tools.
Okay, so there was the federal indictment that came down, and they piggybacked off that.
Yeah, so I'm sure you defended some of these cases. I did as well back when Marty was handling them. But they would, the big hitters would get indicted by the feds, and then there'd be like mid-level drug dealers that they'd indict in state court, and then it would be like users.
Yeah,
and they'd get like 40 users, and you go in, and there'd be, usually at the time they were assigning them all to Judge Picorni, awesome visiting judge that we get a lot of Mahoning County. He comes to our bar events. He'd get the whole case, and there'd be 40 defendants, and we'd all wander in there, and they would deal them pretty liberally with ILC, or maybe you get a misdemeanor if you get a bad case, or some of that other stuff. But they charge all these users with criminal tools because they use their phones to get drugs.
Okay, that's interesting. They're speaking of RICO. And I don't know if this was Marty Desmond's last case, but he did a sports memorabilia case.
Yeah, I remember that.
And the target defendant was a guy named Cliff Panizich. And I think Cliff is either writing or has since wrote a book
about it.
Yeah.
It was a big ring.
Oh, yeah.
They were making a lot of money.
Very interesting. Kid was from the area, went out to Las Vegas. And I mean, you can Google it and just pull up all kinds of information on the case and about him and what he did. But that was an interesting case. The FBI was involved as well as like local task force.
Is it BCI or something?
Yeah, it was really an interesting case. I had one defendant in that case, but I wasn't. Cliff was the target defendant,
main guy.
Yeah, and I don't know if there was like 5 or 6 other guys, but that caught a lot of national attention.
Sure.
So that was an interesting case as well.
Yeah, there were some interviews there for Mr. Desmond as a result of that one.
Yeah,
I think, and that
we've mentioned his name a couple of times now, and but was really a very good lawyer.
Incredible trial lawyer, very smart guy.
Yeah, Marty knew the rules of evidence very well. He was a great lawyer. Is a great lawyer. He still practices. He was a hard charger.
No doubt.
Yeah.
Many contentious moments with Mr. Desmond, but I don't know that doesn't mean I don't respect him. I do.
Yeah, sure.
But it was contentious lawyers in our business no matter what.
Yeah, right.
And there are times when it gets contentious.
I mean, if you're not passionate about what you do, you're probably not good at it.
Yeah, I mean,
there's levels of passion.
Sure.
But if you don't want to get after it a little bit, you probably
should do something else.
Right.
Can write wills.
Right. Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's an adversary process, and you can be a gentleman and you can be reasonable and fair, but you got to advocate for your client.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we could tell this one story. We're talking about Michael Yakovone, and in the trial that we were talking about, I have an aggressive opening statement because we might as well.
Yeah.
I mean, we got to do
what you have to do. Yeah.
So at one point in the opening statement, it's a very small courtroom, and I don't know if it's because of COVID or whatever. There's also 2 co-defendants, so there's 4 lawyers, and the two defendants sitting at counsel table just for the defense, and there's three people at the state's table. It's Jennifer Paris, Michael Yakovone, and the detective who was Lambert.
Okay.
Great detective. But at the time, I had to go on the attack for Detective Lambert. I mean, that was my only. So I'm talking about how people should, generally we trust the government. I mean, that's something that's ingrained in us. You take government class, you think government's appropriate, you don't think they would do something wrong. But the government in this case jumped to a conclusion. I'm pointing at Michael Yakovone, who's a very good friend of mine. Like, the government did this and the government did that. And he's like, what did I do? I thought we were friends. So, I mean, that's how it gets, and you got to just be able to put that aside. I mean, some things it's tough to put aside.
Yeah.
There are some comments that are made in the heat of battle that it's
Can't
hard
forget.
to really put away.
Sure. Yeah, no, it is. It is tough. I mean, we've got good relationships with the prosecutors in Mahoning County and Trumbull County and really any county. I mean, a lot of they're lawyers, they're people, they're good people.
Sure.
But when you go in to a case and you're representing one person or one entity and they're representing another person, another entity, you do your best for your client, and at times it gets ugly. But at the end of the day, you want to win, they want to win. If you shake hands and you can go have a beer after or break bread, I mean, that's the way it's supposed to be.
Yeah, and that's what he said to the jury. He said, Corey and I went to law school together. We've known each other forever. We hang out, but in here, this is what happens.
Yeah.
We're going to get after each other.
Right. Sure. I mean,
don't be surprised when you see us afterwards, but that's what it's like.
Lawyering, trial work specifically, I would always be able to relate to sports because it's a competition, and it may be a little bit more of a sophisticated competition, but it's competition.
Right.
And you're out there to do your best and win, and you play within the rules, and you do what you can do, but you want to win.
Right.
I mean, I don't whether I have a case that on paper is a dead bang loser or not, I never believe for a second that I can't win it in some capacity.
You have to get there.
Yeah,
right?
and if you don't have that mentality, then you can't represent your client the right way.
Sure, you have to. By the time he says all rise and the jury walks in the room, you gotta be there. Even if you didn't think that 3 weeks ago, you better think that by then.
No, you convince yourself for sure.
Right.
Well, Corey, it's 6:10 and I've got youth soccer.
You got to coach that soccer team?
I'm not coaching.
Oh, you have to watch.
Somebody way more experienced and better. Actually, two guys coach my kids. My kids are 4.5. And they're going to go kick the ball here in about 20 minutes. So I got to roll.
All right.
ICG
Legal.